So, ladies and gentlemen, we are the group 5, and our topic is planning for leisure and recreation. Before we proceed, I would like to introduce to you my group mates, which are Miss Javier and Miss Diza. I am Miss Hippolito, and I am the first reporter. In this chapter, we will tackle about planning in historical context, the role of government in planning, key planning processes, local cultural strategies, a 10-stage leisure planning process. So planning in historical context. First, we have the town and country planning, form the basis for much of the contemporary planning system. It was intended as a response to the spot Second World War need for large-scale rebuilding and planning of towns and cities, as well as to help recognize industry. So second, we have subsequent act. This means any claims, judicial or administrative action or proceeding, arbitration or investigation involving the company and in any manner. So arising out of, under, or related to any activity or occurrences subsequent to the closing. The Town and Country Planning Act 1990 is an act of the United Kingdom Parliament regulating the development of land in England and Wales. It is a central part of English land in that it concerns town and country planning in the United Kingdom. So the last one is Planning and Compensation Act 1991. This act amends the law relating to town and country planning to extend the power of acquired by agreement land that may be affected by carrying out public work and to provide compensation where applicable. So, which is this coupled with the permissive powers that related to other form of leisure provision have resulted in considerable variation in the range and scales of provision made by different local authorities. So the standard response was the provision of facilities such as park, playing field, and swimming pools, and this remains today primary areas for local authorities on provision and finance. Early planning policies appear to have been based on three philosophies or a combination of two or more. Equitable distribution, express demand, and social control. So equitable distribution rather than treats each party as equal. Equitable distribution holds that some factors make the owner of properties inherently unequal. Factors that make the parties unequal include education attainment and employability, how much each party earns and spend the financial needs to each party, and the age and the health of each party. Other factors to consider include the standards of living during the marriage or civil union, the contribution by each party to the education, training, or earning power of the other, tax consequences of the proposed distribution, and forcible medical or education costs. So for the express demand present the local total audience demand being expressed for a title within the country on any platform. The audience demand or weighted country-specific measure of demand. So social control. Social control is a concept within the disciplines of the social science. Social control is described as a certain set rather of rules and standards in society that keeps individual bound to conventional standard as well as to the use of formalized mechanism. The disciplinary model was the forerunner for the control model. So the movement has evolved from a concern for public health, education, and moral standards to problems of inner cities and countryside recreation and conservation. Since the Public Health Act 1848, which authorized local authorities to provide public walks and pleasure grounds, successive acts of parliament were formulated to meet changing demand. This included Physical Training and Recreation Act 1937, which meant an act to provide the development for facilities for the encouragement of physical training and recreation, and to facilitate the establishment of centers for social activities. National Park and Access to the Countryside Act 1949, an act to make provision for national park and the establishment of the National Park Commission to confer on the Nature Conservancy and the local authorities power to the establishment and maintenance of nature reserves. Also to make further provision for the recording, creation, maintenance, and improvement on public paths and for securing access to open country, and to amend the law relating to right of way. So the Countryside Act 1968, it provided for the employment and countryside's warden and for the making by law and connecting with such facilities. So the role of government in planning system regulates development and layout and land use and contribute to the government strategy for the sustainable development in town, cities, and the countryside. Planning is part of the remit of the office of the Deputy Prime Minister in England. There are just over 400 planning authorities, including Country Council, District Council, unitary authorities, and national park authorities. So, the role of government in planning. Um, First, we have regional planning guidance, which is regional planning in England and Wales has a long but somewhat discontinuous and checkered history. A number of factors, including the absence of regional government, frequent changes in the powers and structures of local government, and political vacillation and national level regarding the merits and purposes of strategy planning have resulted in recent decades in the existence of a form of or the existence of a form or regional planning practice which has lacked continuity, displayed little confidence that even the best laid plans will be implemented without major revision. So structure plan. Um, for second structure plans, the whole process of structure plans was completed by the recognition of local government, which took place in 1974. At the same time, the Department of the Environment has issued circulars encouraging local authorities to concentrate on key issues within an area when plans are being prepared. So for the local plans are prepared by the local planning authorities, which is we called LPA, usually the council or the national park authorities for the sea. The National Planning Policy Framework, or the NPPF, states that the planning system should be genuinely plan-led. It should provide a positive vision for the future, of course, of each area in the framework for addressing housing needs and other economic and environmental priorities. So for the unitary development plans, it is an old style development plans prepared by a metropolitan district authorities and some unitary local authorities. A unitary development plans contains policies similar to those found in both a structure plan and a local plan. So these plans will continue to exist for a while after the introduction of the new development system under the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 due to the transitional provision provided for in the Act. For the minerals plan, so mineral plants resources are defined as the natural concentrations of mineral or in the case of aggregates, bodies of rock that are or many become of potential economic interest due to their inherent properties. They make an essential contribution to the country's prosperity and quality of life. So for the waste plan, the government overall approach to research or to resource and waste is one of moving away from the current linear economy model of take, make, use, and throw towards a more circular economy which keeps resources in use of longer so that they can extract minimum value from them. Their goal is to maximize the value of the resources. They maximize the value of the resources they use, maximize the waste they create, and therefore avoid emissions from the waste sector, driving toward their target of net zero emission by 2050. Income, regional, spatial, strategies and local development documents. Strategies brings together and integrating policies for the use and development of land with other policies and programs that after areas and how they function. These are prepared at regional level by the regional assembly in line and national policy and guidelines. So the town and country planning system aims to ensure that development occurs in the right place and in the appropriate development prevented. The system helps to plan for home, school, factories, road, and etc. And doing so protects the natural and man-made environment and ensure the planning decision do not damage the environment for the future generation. So a number of factors have been brought to bear on local authorities in recent time, including the National Lottery funding new facilities, best value legislation, a revision of policy planning guidelines, and the instruction to local authorities to prepare local cultural strategies. So the word culture encompassing leisure is one of significance in the only relatively recently was that concept of leisure itself accepted as the umbrella term. So leisure professionals need to be aware of key planning process like statutory plan, planning policy guidelines, planning obligations, and development plans and development control. So, for the stationary plans, the planning system is preferred to us and plan-led because decisions are taken in the concept of plans down up by local council and consultation with local communities and other organizations. Planners have a legal duty to conform to stationary plans regulations. In parallel, they have to try to meet local needs. The view of local councils may well conflict with the planner's statutory role. So first we have the structure plans. Um, a structural plan is a framework to guide the development or redevelopment of an area by defining the future development and land use patterns. So areas of open space, the layout and the nature of infrastructure, including the transportation links, and other key features and constraints that influence how the effects of development are to be managed. Supported district plans or local plans. District plans means maps and any other related geography, information of the boundaries of all single members district corresponding to each member of an elected body that is subject and districting. So the unitary development plans means unitary development plans is an important policy statement to which all planning application must have regard and where it is materials to a development proposal. So Sector 54A of the 1990 Act requires the application to be determined in accordance with the plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So planning policy guidelines. National policy is set out in planning policies guidelines note, which apply in different aspects of planning. So this form the basis for policies contained in local development plans, which each local planning authority must produce for its era. Planning Policy Guideline, or also known PPG, Planning for Open Space, Sports and Recreation is the guidance which has been of greatest interest to leisure, sports, and recreation professionals. It was first published in 1991. The government's main planning objectives were to promote sustainable patterns of developments, social inclusion, and urban renaissance. Local authorities were expected to adopt a strategic approach to the provision of the new facilities and to plan positively for their effect maintenance. The loss of playing field and open spaces. The green belts are area of land that are intended to be left open and protected from the development to control the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas, prevent town and merging, preserving the countryside. So the country planning or playing field England directions 1998 requires that before any local planning authority in the England proposes or grant planning permission for the development of a planning field against the advice of Sport England. They must consult rather the Secretary of State. So in PPG, two green belts. One of the objective for the use of land in green belt is to provide opportunities for outdoor sports and outdoor recreation near urban areas. However, the constructions of the new building inside the green belt is inappropriate unless it is for one of number of specified purposes, including essentials facility for outdoor sports and outdoor recreation. Example of such facilities include small charging room or spectator accommodation for outdoor sports. So for the planning obligation, there has been much debate over the proposed reform of the planning system and whether planning obligations should be replaced by a traffic-based approach. Currently, local authorities may enter into planning obligations under Sector 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to secure the provision of public open space and sporting, recreational, social, education, or other community facilities as part of larger mixed developments. The planning obligation is normally applies to aspects of development that cannot be controlled by imposing a planning conditions or by use of other stationary controls without in the planning permission could not be granted. So for my last report, development plans and sustainability. Development plans provide a statement of the type of the development which would and which would not be acceptable. They must have regard to national policies and regional guidance. Members of the public have a number of opportunities to comment on the proposed development plans before it is adopted. Sustainable development is a dynamic process in which communities anticipate and accommodate the needs of current and future generation in way that reproduce and balance local social, economic, and ecological system and link local action of global concern. So that is my last report. Once again, I am Miss Hippolito, and for the second reporter, we have
Cultural strategies. There are social health, community, economics, and environmental benefits in developing opportunities for and participation in cultural activities. Local cultural strategies draft guidance for local authorities in England. DCMS 1999 was published in June 1999 by the Department of Culture, Media, and Sports in partnership with the local government association and the Chief Culture and Leisure Officer Association. Following pilots project in 14 local authorities, the final guidance creating opportunities guidance for local authorities in England on cultural strategies. DCMS 2000 was published in December 2000. Local authorities are being encouraged to provide opportunities to all past their community to engage in cultural activities and for the strategies to support social and economic regeneration, lifelong learning, environmental sustainability, development of healthy communities. However, the concept of culture generally considered as activities pertaining to the arts is difficult to communicate to the wider sports and leisure audience. The DCMS is at the pain to stress at all embracing cultures and emphasize the culture has both a value dimension and material dimension. The value dimension incorporates, for example, is relationships, shared memories and experience and identity, diverse cultural, religious, and historical backgrounds, standards, what we consider valuable to the past to the future generation. The material dimension includes, for example, is the performing and visual arts, craft and fashion, media, film, television, video and language, museum, artifacts, archives and design, libraries, literatures, writing and publishing, the built heritage, architecture, landscape and archaeology, sports, events, facilities and development, parks, open spaces, wildlife, habitats, water environment, and countryside recreation, children's play, playgrounds and play activities, tourism, festival and attraction, and lastly is informal leisure pursuits. The guidance set out underpinning principles, local cultural strategies should be guided by a vision, promote the cultural well-being of the area, meet the needs, demands, and aspiration, ensure fair access for all, develop a cross-departmental and interagency approach, take a holistic rather than a service viewpoint, have a clear link with other national, regional, and local strategies and plan, ensure meaningful active consultation, take account of the wider central and regional government context, contribute to the government's key objectives. Next is assessment of demand. Leisure behavior is by no means fully predictable and there is no single connect method of assessing potential demand. Provision should not be therefore be based in simple set of measurement criteria or rules. By using different approaches to the problem, greater confidence can be attached to the solution. A range of methods include the following. First is the range of methods include the following. The first is standard of provision. One of the most developed and widely accepted approaches to the equitable distribution of recreational services is the uses of scales of provision. Standards and norms. Many standards are not based on empirical research, but on long-accepted assumption of what is needed. Standards appeal to the politicians and planner authorities than the thinking for you. The advantage of standards are they are simple and efficient. They can lead to the same level of provision area to area. They act as eternal authoritative sources, and lastly, they can be measured, monitored, and assessed. Location and attraction factor of leisure facilities. When asked what were the three most important factors in development of hotels, Concord Hilton cited location, location, location. This equally applies to the most leisure facilities. Ideally, a public leisure facility should be located near a main road that is well served by a public transport system. In close proximity to the facilities, in this way, the accessibility of the facilities improve and catchment area is extended along the main road. People traveling along the road will have a high level of awareness of the facility, and this can be exploited in terms of promotion. The large facility versus distribution of smaller facilities. In ideal world, both centralized and localized facilities are provided. However, with scarce resources, often a choice has to be made. This is a debate that is primarily important to any strategy, whether to provide a large centrally located facilities or numerous smaller facilities. Strategically placed throughout the district, there will probably be savings in the capital cost if only one large center is provided, as the economies of scale would apply. However, the closer a person resides to a leisure facilities such as swimming pool, community center, library, or sports center, the more likely the person concerned is to use the facilities as compared to a person who resides some distance away, as a distance decay curve principle apply. Further, the person living closer is also more likely to use facility more frequently. Hence, in terms of strategy, the greater distribution facility, the more accessible they become to more local people. A large central has the catchment area because of the attraction factor and the range of activities on offer, but most users have to be mobile. And travel time. Travel time is the development of out-of-town shopping and family entertainment. centered as shown that people are prepared to travel, but the travel type is a key. People make longer journeys to specialist facilities such as the next is catchments, areas, and location. Spatial analysis in recent years in the United Kingdom, extensive users surveys will be taken of many leisure facilities, and from these, an indication of the size of facilities catchment area can be made. By using this approach, the geographic area covered by the facility's perceived catchment area can be identified with areas that theoretically not being served. This is a useful planning tool, but it has a limitation. No consideration is taken the quality of existing facility or whether it has a spare capacity. If the demands exceed supply, it assumes that the density of population is evenly distributed, while in reality, there may be pockets of heavily populated areas and other areas where fewer people resides. The next is national participative rates. Large-scale national or regional participate surveys such as the General Household Surveys or GHS and British Market Research Bureau survey can be used to help determine what the potential demand may be for a given community. However, the level of participation is largely dependent upon the level of provision and does not take into consideration potential or deferred demand. Additionally, such surveys do not normally indicate the participation rates within different types of neighborhood. Another national survey that can be used in the approach in the Target Group Index or TGI, which is National Consumption Survey funded by the British market. Next is matrix grid approach. This approach is more of the management technique than a planning up an important function in specific situation. For example, where a plan been established for a range of possible developments on a particular site, facilities within a park or geographical zone have to meet the demands of the community. By dividing the community into the different categories, school, young children, teenagers, adults, and so on. Listing their needs, this against facilities available, deficiencies can be determined. Further can be used to place a list of facility or service deficiencies into a prior list or to select the most appropriate site from the range of possibilities. The following list suggests a range of questions that could be asked to community recreation priority criterion ranking system for new development. First is, does the proposed facility meet an unfulfilled local leisure need? Second is, has there been a high level of expressed demand for the facility? Third is, does the facility replace or renew a facility with a high value to community trap? Fourth is, will the facility specifically benefits person from the leisure-derived area? Fifth is, will the facility benefit priority target group? Sixth is the facility likely to attract a high level of usage and meet the needs of different group? And lastly is age group.
Hi everyone, I'm Faith Javier, the last reporter. Need index approach. Approach determines whether a deficiency exists and places the different deficiency areas into a priority ranking. The basic concept behind this approach is simple and is illustrated. This approach is well illustrated when applied to the provision of children's playgrounds. First, it is necessary to assess the needs and measure of the resources. Factors that affect children's opportunity to play, together with indicators of social deprivation, should be examined. This includes, for example, the number of children, incidence of high-rise flats, lack of gardens, dwelling lacking basic amenities, number of unemployed, working mothers, and lone parenthood. In measuring the resources, factors to be considered include location of the playground area, are size of the playground, range and the nature of the equipment, and weather of the playgrounds. Express demand, a strategy for playing pitches. The level of demand for existing facilities can provide a useful guide as to whether additional facilities are required in an area. The Register of Recreational Land in England was produced in 1993 by the Sports Council, now Sport England, as a result of a joint initiative with the Central Council of Physical Recreation or CCPR and the NPFA. The register collected information on over 73,000 sports pitches in England across 24,500 sites, covering a total of 150,300 acres of land. Information on ownership, type of usage, for example, public, schools, private, size, type of surface, flood lighting, ancillary facilities, and threats from development were detailed. However, concern over reliability of the data and that it has not been updated since 1993 has led to skepticism about its value for planning. The Planning Pitch Strategy or PPS published in 1991 was a guidance document written by the Sports Council, the NPFA, and the CCPR. This was viewed during 2001 and 2002 and republished with the title Towards as Level Playing Field, a guide to the production of playing pitch strategies by Sport England at the CPR in February 2003. The difference to previous approaches is that instead of using land area per head of population as the basic unit, it measures demand at peak time. In terms of teams, requiring pitches and then compares this with the pitches available. Basic information required to employ the methodology involves calculating demand and supply. Under the demand is the number of teams in an area, whether adult or junior team, male or female, each team's home ground, day and time of week when home games are played, number and type of home games played in a season, number of weeks of the playing season, demographic data for study area or actual and projected. Under the supply is size and surface, grass or artificial, of each pitch. Sports for which it is used, ownership of the pitch, public, private, or educational, availability of different days and different times. In addition to these quantitative elements, other qualitative information and trends is demand can be gathered. Given the basic information, there are sequential stages in the process. Sequential stages in the process, identifying teams or team equivalent in the main pitch sports, calculating the number of home games per team per week, assessing the total home games per week, establishing the demand for games in different times, calculating the number of pitches used of required on each day or the peak day in the week, recording the total amount of pitches available, addressing problems and issues rising from the above, developing a range of policy options to overcome the problems identified. It is essential that the methodology is used as a means of understanding the relationship between the demand for pitches and their supply. Its output should be tempered by detailed local knowledge and common sense. Facilities Planning Model. The Sports Council Facilities Planning Model, or Sports Council 1998, is a method of assessing the demand for sports facilities as the community level of provision. The basic structure of a model is to compare them and for facilities with supply, using the same unit of measurement, this being number of visits per week at peak times. The approach has three components: demand, supply, and catchment areas. The demand is measured by the rate and frequency of participation using local and national data, example from surveys. The supply side is measured by working out the number of attendances a facility can accommodate in a specific peak period. In terms of catchment, calculations are based on identifying the distance traveled by the regular participants, 70 to 80% of users. The model is based on comparing demand and supply, applying that to a specific geographical area and thereby identifying where demand is located, whether and to what extent demand exceeds supply, whether and where spare capacity exists. Local demand is measured based on the number of visits per week in peak period or for any particular sports facility determined by the total number of people resided within study area, the demand rate, the proportion of residents who want to use the facility type of particular sports, the desired frequency of visits, how often do you want to visit, the proportion of visit when arise the normal peak periods per week. The benefits of the model include the fact that it's based on actual participation, applies to a local population, a discrete geographical area, and that different facilities can be assessed during the same approach. The model can also be used in urban and rural settings. The model has been used principally to help make decisions on the provision of sports halls, swimming pools, and synthetic turf pitches. Whether its application can go further to playing fields is at present not known. Next is public consultation. Public consultation after express demand is arguably the most important indicator of public demand. The weaknesses that people need demand facilities but never use them. In addition, the more articulated and organized leisure groups are often the most vocal. Without such consultation, the planning process is one of the dictating provisions for people as opposed to planning with the people. The major methods of consulting with the public include community demand surveys, user surveys, organization surveys, public meetings, working meetings, interviews, focus groups. Community demand surveys. Four types of survey used regularly are household interviews, street interviews, postal surveys, and telephone surveys. The face-to-face household interview is a sound approach but can be both time-consuming and expensive to administer. In order to avoid unnecessarily alarming residents, particularly the elderly, household interviews are best undertaken following an introduction, which requires even more time. A face-to-face alternative is the streets survey. This requires achieving randomized quota sampling, example a reasonable cross-section of males and females, different age groups, and so on. It also calls for trained, sensitive interviewers. The postal survey is much easier and cheaper to administer. Although it has limitations, the response rate can be very low unless some interest has been created in the local media or an incentive is associated with the return of the questionnaire. A telephone survey using skillful, sensitive researchers is comparatively easy to undertake, provided the questionnaire is short and simple. The problems are those of contracting the selected people and getting accepted. Many sales personnel use the telephone to sell products such as double glazing and kitchen refurbishments. Hence, there is resentment to this form of consultation. Leisure facility user surveys. User surveys conducted in a face-to-face approach or by self-completing questionnaires can be informative, providing information on the user profile, the facility's catchment area, and also the area is not being served. Participation data, example activities and frequency. Perceptions of the facility and how it is managed and expectations for the future. User surveys where the questionnaires are self-administered tend to be less representative and the response rate is reduced. Though this method is easier and cheaper, identifying users also provides a broad picture of the non-users. Survey of clubs, societies, and organizations. A survey of local clubs and societies can provide valuable information regarding membership levels, resources, and current and future requirements. Further, too many clubs are inward-looking and are not prepared to look at aspects beyond those that directly affect their members. Responses then to below. Public meetings. Although opinions given at public meetings are not necessarily those representing all the community, they do give an indication of the strength of the support or opposition to a particular proposal. Good promotion is necessary to ensure the adequate representative attendances are achieved at the meetings and that those who shout loudest or have vested interested do not hold sway. Working with this press to give balanced reports requires good public relations. Next is working party approach. A much underused approach is that of a working party whereby members of local clubs, residents' associations, and etc., together with the officer and member from the local council are formed into a working party that has delegated authority to propose recommendations. It is important, however, that such working parties have authority to influence decisions or they simply become talking shops and soon lose enthusiasm. The advantages associated with this approach are considerable. It is democracy at work and hopefully the realistic expectations of the local community can be fulfilled. Interviews. Interviews with community leaders can be an invaluable source of information. The group might include politicians, teachers, leisure leaders, lay workers, youth leaders, social workers, police, ethnic minority representatives, disadvantaged and disabled groups, and the business community. Likewise, informal interviews with shopkeepers, publicans, postal workers, all those who encounter a wide range of residents helps to build a picture of how different people perceive the current provision and how it is managed and what deficiency is they think exists. Focus groups. Focus interviews on America in the evaluation of audience response to radio programs. They were adapted into focus group interviews after the Second World War. The pioneer was Robert Morton, Stewart, and Sam Dasani, 1990. The focus interview differs from others in four ways. All those interviewed have been involved in a practical concrete situation. The content has been previously analyzed and hypotheses have been arrived at. An interview guide has been fashioned and the interview itself is focused on the subjective experience of the persons exposed to the pre-analyzed situation. The focus group interview generally involves 8 to 12 individuals who discuss a particular topic under the direction of the moderator who promotes interaction and assures that the discussion remains on the topic of interest. Smaller groups may be dominated by one or two members, while larger groups are difficult to manage. A typical focus group sessions will last for 1.5 to 2.5 hours. Next is In Leisure and the Family Cycle, Rapoport and Rapoport, 1975. The Rapoports and Strelitz 30 years ago looked beneath the surface of leisure planning and revealed underlying predispositions towards leisure. Landing should not be by feasible extensions of what already exists and is known to be workable and on hunches about what people needs are, but begin from the people's side of the equation. Brandenburg and others, 1982, developed this model further towards the understanding of why a person adopts a particular activity. The process commences with the preoccupations and interests. There are four conditions: opportunity, knowledge, favorable social milieu, and receptiveness, were deemed necessary and sufficient to enable an interest to be expressed through adoption of specific activity. These conditions are focused upon specific activity by one or more key events, which may at the same time modify the conditions themselves. The leisure planning process is a conceptual term. It's a simple model based on identifying leisure needs and demands and providing services and facilities to meet those demands. Set out below is a 10-stage leisure planning approach based on a racial theory and current practical application from a leisure management perspective. Stage 1. Determine council policies, goals, and objectives. This concerns the philosophical basis of providing the community and the rules of the council. Examples as provider, enabler, partner, and so on. Stage 2. Evaluate current leisure provisions and services. This dish identifies the type, range, and ownership of facilities, whether public, voluntary, or commercial. It also evaluates effectiveness and efficiency usage and management. It determines the level of demand and spare capacity. Stage 3. Consult widely. This stage provides that opportunity to find out whether what is to be provided and how it is delivered are appropriate for those it is intended to serve. Consultation is needed with local residents, workers, and organizations. A range of techniques should be used. Stage 4. assess known and potential demand. Although there is no single leisure planning technique that can accurately indicate what the potential demand may be for a particular activity or facility, a good indication can be obtained by using different leisure planning techniques, including demand modeling. Stage 5. The term in deficiencies and surpluses. This stage analyzes the supply-demand relationship. Comparing the level of potential demand with the actual provision should theoretically produce a list of deficiencies. It would be realistic for any authority to contemplate redressing all the perceived deficiencies, rather the deficiencies should be ranked in order of priority. Stage 6. Identify and assess resources available. It will be necessary to examine all potential sites of leisure development, and this should be assessed in terms of their suitability. Example, size, terrain, accessibility, environmental considerations. Stage 7. Select management approaches. There now exists a range of management options, and it is incumbent on local authorities to provide best value. Options include competitive tendering, not-for-profit organizations, trust, buyouts, buy-ins, concessions, partnership, and hybrids. Different facilities and services may well require different management approaches. Stage 8. Reduce or reverse the authority's cultural strategy. Stage 8. Reduce or reverse the authority's cultural strategy and local leisure plan. Local authorities are obliged to produce a local cultural strategy. Leisure managers will also need to prepare a local leisure plan or series of specific plans. Example, arts, sports, and recreation. Incorporating short and medium term development plans for the area with the council's role in the development being clearly defined. Stage 9 Action Plan. To implement the strategies, it will be necessary to produce an action plan with the clear objectives, targets, and methods of the measurement. Areas of responsibility will need to be assigned to key committees, and officers will delegate areas of responsibility. To ensure that the tasks are completed on time, it is advisable that the detailed critical path analysis network be drawn up. Stage 10 Monitor and evaluate. The progress made will need to be monitored and results measured. This should include the effects of the actions upon the community. That's all. Thank you.